One kiss saved her life, but the man she kissed wasn't letting her walk away. Leila Vance had exactly 5 seconds before the men across the bar reached her. 5 seconds before she was dragged into a black car and disappeared. She didn't have a weapon. She didn't have an exit. So she did the only insane thing left. The ice in Leila Vance's martini had melted into a sad, watery lagoon. She wasn't drinking it. The $28 cocktail was a prop, her knuckles bone-white around the crystal stem, her anchor in the swirling, polished chaos of the Ascendant Hotel bar. Every laugh from the suited men at the corner table, every clink of glass, was a potential starter's pistol for a chase she was losing. The data chip was a live coal against her sternum, hidden in the simple silver locket she never took off. On it, the truth that would burn her world down, 74 terabytes of corrupted clinical trials, buried internal memos, and the definitive, horrifying proof that Serenity, Elysian Industries' billion-dollar wonder drug for anxiety, caused irreversible neural degradation. It didn't heal minds, it dissolved them from the inside out. And they knew she had it. 2 men entered the bar. They didn't scan the room, they dissected it with the cold, methodical efficiency of surgeons. Their suits were expensive but austere, their faces the same ones from the airport garage 3 days ago, from the train station yesterday. Elysian's Compliance and Asset Recovery Team. A euphemism for corporate ghosts who made problems disappear. Panic, sharp and metallic, flooded Leila's mouth. Run, screamed every instinct. But running in this glass-and-brass fishbowl would paint a neon target on her back. She had to vanish in plain sight. Her gaze, frantic, swept the room, the laughing couples, the business meeting, the lone woman texting, and landed on an anomaly. A man. At the far end of the bar, he was an island of profound stillness. He wasn't conventionally handsome, he was arresting. Late 30s, dark hair swept back from a forehead that spoke of intellect, not peace. His face was a landscape of sharp, unforgiving angles, a blade of a nose, a jawline that could cut glass. He was reading something on a sleek financial tablet, his focus absolute, his posture radiating a control so complete it felt like a challenge to the universe itself. He was the most real, solid, and terrifying thing in the room. A desperate, reckless plan crystallized in the acid bath of her fear. Use him. Her legs, numb with terror, carried her off the stool. The 10 steps to his end of the bar felt like a marathon. The world narrowed to the pounding in her ears and the broad expanse of his back in a perfectly tailored charcoal suit. She stopped beside him, the scent of sandalwood and cold, clean air hitting her senses. She placed one trembling hand on the cool marble bar for balance. The other hand lifted. Her fingers, cold as death, touched the rough smooth plane of his jaw, tilting his face toward her. He looked up. His eyes were the color of a winter storm over a slate sea, pale gray, piercing, and utterly devoid of warmth. There was no surprise in them. No annoyance. Only a sudden, profound, and terrifying alertness. He saw her, all of her, the terror, the desperation, the lie she was about to perform. Play along, she breathed, the words a barely audible plea scraped raw from her throat. Please. And she kissed him. It lasted 3 frantic heartbeats. Her lips were soft, chilled from her drink, and tasted of salt and fear. It was a shockingly intimate gesture in the middle of a crowded bar, a performance for an audience of 2 hunters. But as her mouth met his, the world didn't just tilt, it inverted. He didn't pull away. He didn't stiffen. He simply accepted. And in that infinite, suspended second, she felt it, a seismic shift. These weren't a stranger's passive lips. This was a door slamming shut on her old life, and a new one, darker, heavier, and profoundly unknown, swinging open on silent, oiled hinges. She broke away, the heat of a furious blush scorching her cheeks. A scripted, flustered apology tumbled out. "I'm so sorry, I thought you were someone else, my date," he His hand shot out. Not to strike, but to encircle her wrist. The grip wasn't painful, but it was final. Unbreakable. A manacle clicking shut. His storm-cloud gaze flicked over her shoulder, taking in the two suits who had now zeroed in on her location, their expressions shifting from search to confirmation. Understanding, cold and complete, flashed in his eyes. "Quiet," he murmured. His voice was a low, resonant vibration that cut through the jazz and her panic like a seismic rumble. In one fluid, disorienting motion, he was off his stool, his body a solid wall of heat and tailored wool as he tucked her against his side, a gesture of unmistakable, casual possession to any observer. He guided her, firmly but without haste, away from the bar, not toward the exit, but toward a discreet, brushed steel elevator bank marked Penthouse and SPA. "Wait," she protested, a feeble tug against his iron grip. "Now," he stated, his voice leaving no room for argument, "is not the time for discussion." He produced a black keycard from his inner pocket and pressed it to a reader. The elevator doors slid open with a hushed ping. He ushered her in, his body still shielding hers. As the doors began to close, Leila caught a final glimpse of the hotel lobby. The two Elysian men had been intercepted by the hotel manager, a man in an impeccable suit whose polite smile didn't reach his eyes as he physically stepped into their path, blocking their pursuit. Her hunters had been stopped by a bigger, calmer predator. The elevator ascended in a silent, dizzying rush. Leila leaned against the mirrored wall, her breath coming in short gasps. He stood beside her, hands in his pockets, watching the floor numbers climb as if this were a mundane daily occurrence. The penthouse suite was a study in severe, breathtaking luxury. Floor-to-ceiling windows presented the city as a glittering, subservient diorama. The furnishings were minimalist, achingly expensive, and cold. The air smelled of lemon polish and absolute silence. He released her wrist. "Who are you?" Leila demanded, rubbing the skin where his fingers had been, half expecting a brand. "Kane," he said, walking to a sideboard and pouring 2 glasses of water from a crystal carafe. He didn't offer her one. He set them both down on a low table, a simple, powerful statement of control. "And you are a woman who was approximately 30 seconds from being dragged into a black sedan with tinted windows. I can handle myself." "You handle yourself," he stated, turning to face her fully, his expression devoid of malice, like a rabbit in an open field. "You used me as camouflage. That was smart. Instinctive. But the performance ends the moment you leave this room. They will be waiting. They have the exits covered, the staff paid, or intimidated. So I'll call the police," she said, the defiance hollow even to her own ears. "With what evidence?" He raised a single, skeptical eyebrow. "A feeling? A description of 2 well-dressed men? You have no visible wounds, no overt threat was made. You are a phantom screaming into the void." He finally picked up one of the water glasses and took a slow sip, his eyes never leaving hers. "You're coming with me." "Like hell I am." A ghost of something crossed his stark features. Not a smile. The fleeting, predatory interest of a hawk that has spotted unexpected movement in the grass below. "The kiss was your idea. You walked into my orbit. That makes you my concern." He nodded toward a hallway leading off the main living area. "Second door on the left. There's a bedroom. Get some sleep. We leave at dawn." He hasn't asked her name. He hasn't asked why. He's simply decided. Saved, but captured. What does a man who commands a 5-star hotel with a look want with a terrified stranger? Dawn arrived as a pale, rosy smear over the skyline. Leila, who had spent the night staring at the ceiling of a bedroom larger than her entire apartment, found a set of clothes laid out on a velvet armchair. A cashmere sweater the color of cream, tailored black trousers, soft leather flats. All exquisitely made, perfectly her size. The silent, unnerving display of his reach tightened the knot in her stomach. Kane was in the living area, speaking in low, rapid-fire Russian into a satellite phone. He finished the call as she entered, his eyes sweeping over her, cataloging her appearance with detached efficiency. "Eat," he said, gesturing to a breakfast spread of fruits, pastries, and coffee. "We have a flight in 90 minutes. A flight to where?" "Somewhere you can breathe without looking over your shoulder every 7 seconds. "I'm not going anywhere with you," Leila stated, crossing her arms. "You saved me from a bad situation. Thank you. The debt is paid. I'll take my chances from here." Kane leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers. He assessed her with the cold focus of a strategist evaluating an unpredictable variable. "You misunderstand the transaction. This isn't about debt. You presented a problem at my doorstep. I am now engaged in solving it. The solution, for the moment, requires your physical presence and your compliance." He laid out his perception of her with chilling, surgical accuracy. She was running from a corporate entity, not a street gang. Her fear was too clean, too paranoid. She had something they wanted desperately, likely digital, likely evidence. She was intelligent, the choice of the bar, the improvisation proved that, but emotionally compromised, which made her predictable. His offer was a brutal, non-negotiable contract, absolute obedience for absolute protection. He would identify and neutralize the threat. She would stay within the boundaries he set. "You're a kidnapper," she spat, the word tasting like ash. "I'm a pragmatist," he corrected, unruffled. "You have a choice. You can walk out that door right now. See how long your freedom lasts. I give it 6 hours before you're in the trunk of a car. Or," he continued, his voice dropping into a quieter, more dangerous register, "you can accept that your life, as you knew it, is over. It ended the moment you kissed me. A new one begins today. On my terms." He slid a sleek, black phone across the polished table. It was passwordless. A single number was programmed into its contacts. Rule 1, you do not lie to me. Ever. Rule 2, you use this phone. For everything. It is your lifeline and your leash. He isn't demanding her secret, yet. He's demanding her. What does this ruthless pragmatist see in a frightened whistleblower that's worth this monumental trouble? Kane's world was a fortress of quiet, intimidating power. The private jet was a cocoon of leather and hushed efficiency. They flew north to a secluded, modernist estate carved into the cliffs overlooking the Hudson River in upstate New York. It was all sharp angles, glass, and steel, a beautiful bunker. Men like Victor, Kane's head of security, moved through the halls with the lethal, economical grace of panthers. They treated Leila with a detached, polite caution, as if she were a valuable but volatile artifact in their master's collection. Leila observed Kane's days from the gilded periphery of her cage. He ran a vast, opaque network of holdings, shipping, tech, private equity. From his Stark office, he conducted symphony orchestras of power. She witnessed one call where a supplier who had attempted to cheat him was financially eviscerated with a few soft-spoken, impeccably timed sentences. The threat was never physical, it was existential. This was a man who unmade worlds from behind a desk. Her defiance was her last tether to her old self. She refused meals, they were left for her, replaced at precise intervals. She asked Victor pointed, probing questions about the legality of Kane's operations. Victor answered with polite, uninformative smiles. One afternoon, she tried to access an unsecured Wi-Fi signal, only for Victor to appear silently beside her moments later, holding out a tablet with a dedicated, heavily monitored guest network login. "For your safety, Miss Vance," he'd said, his voice gentle, his eyes unyielding. The tension between her and Kane was a live wire strung through the cold, beautiful house. One evening, she found him in the library, a wall of first editions behind him. He was reading a biography of Catherine the Great. Why keep me? She asked, leaning against the doorframe. I'm a liability. A complication. You could have dumped me at a police station and been done with it. He didn't look up from his book. Are you a liability? I don't know anything about your business. I can't help you. You know how to be desperate, he said, his finger tracing a line of text. You know how to be clever under pressure. You know how to survive when the odds are engineered against you. That has value. To be used? Finally, he closed the book with a soft thump and looked at her. To be understood. He stood, approaching her with that slow, predator's grace. He didn't touch her, but his presence seemed to push the air from the room. The woman in the bar didn't freeze. She didn't run in a blind panic. She improvised. She assessed the terrain, identified the strongest-looking variable, and bet her life on a single, reckless act. That isn't cowardice, Leila. That's a weapon. A raw, uncalibrated, but very real weapon. You just don't know how to aim it yet. Her breath hitched. He saw her not as a victim to be protected, but as potential to be shaped. It was the most terrifying thing he'd said to her yet. The outside world crashed into their insulated fortress 2 days later. A perimeter alarm tripped, not a casual intrusion, but a sophisticated, digital probe attempting to bypass the estate's security grid. It was repelled, but not before a message was left on Kane's most secure, encrypted server. It read, "A gift for your guest. She has until midnight to make contact. Return what's ours." Attached were 3 photographs. Time-stamped from that morning. They showed Leila's younger sister, Chloe, laughing with a friend outside a coffee shop in Portland. In another, she was unlocking her car. In the third, the telephoto lens had caught the worry in her eyes as she glanced over her shoulder, sensing the phantom behind the camera. Leila's world, the fragile defiance she'd built, shattered. She found Kane in his study that night, a stark silhouette against the wall of glass, the river a black ribbon far below. The words spilled out of her in a ragged, tearless torrent: the sleepless years at Elysian as a lead data analyst, the first anomalous results in the Serenity trials, the quiet pressure to re-evaluate, the doctored reports she'd accidentally uncovered, the senior researcher who'd agreed to go public with her and was later found dead in a supposed hiking accident. Her doomed, naive attempt to contact a journalist, the immediate lockdown of her files, the realization she was already a target. The data chip, her life's truth and her death warrant, burning in her locket. He listened. A statue hewn from shadow and ice. When her voice finally gave out, hollow and scraped raw, he didn't offer platitudes or comfort. Elysian Industries, he said, the name flat and heavy in the quiet room. Senator John Vance sits on its board. He's their most vocal advocate in Washington for military and federal health contracts. He's been instrumental in fast-tracking Serenity for VA hospitals. Leila went cold, a different kind of fear seizing her. This was the secret within the secret. The shame that curdled in her gut. She wrapped her arms around herself, her voice a whisper. He's my father. Kane's head turned slowly. His winter-storm eyes pinned her in place. The mid-story twist. He hadn't just taken in a whistleblower. He'd harbored the daughter of a United States senator, a man woven into the fabric of the very power structure she was trying to expose. The data implicates him directly? Kane's voice was dangerously soft. It implicates the entire board for the cover-up. But his signature is on the internal order to bury the Phase 3 results. He knew. He signed off on the lie to protect his investments, his political capital. She swallowed bile. I wasn't just blowing the whistle on a company. I was trying to destroy my own father. A long, profound silence stretched between them, filled only by the faint hum of the electronics. Leila braced for disgust, for a cold recalculation of her worth as a liability now exponentially increased. Instead, Kane's expression hardened into something that looked, to her shock, like grim, unwavering respect. You were willing to burn your entire life. Your family's legacy. Your safety. For a truth that would ruin you as much as them. It wasn't noble, she choked out. It was the only thing left I could do. The only thing that was right. Now, Kane said, pushing away from the window, the decision made and radiating from him like a physical force, I know exactly what I'm dealing with. And I know exactly what I'm destroying. Her deepest secret is out, and it's a political nuclear bomb. Kane now knows he's not just fighting a corporation, but a U.S. senator with immense power, her own father. Will his protection hold against that? Is she worth a war on two fronts? Kane's plan was not to hide, but to annihilate. He presented it to her the next morning with the clarity of a military campaign. Hiding you indefinitely is a passive strategy. It cedes the initiative. We will take it back. He explained his gambit. They would use the data not as a hidden shield, but as a spear. He would orchestrate a perfectly timed, multi-pronged attack. A confidential packet to the most dogged SEC investigator he knew, coupled with a simultaneous, devastating media leak to a consortium of international outlets. The delivery mechanism? The most public stage possible, Elysian Industries' annual Horizon Gala, its glittering fundraiser where the board, the investors, and Senator Vance himself would be preening under the lights. You will be my guest, Kane said, his gaze steady on hers. You will be the spark in the powder keg. My network will be the fuse and the fire. Then he did something he'd never done before. He gave her a choice. A real one. This is the crossroads, Leila. I can have Victor take you tonight. New identity, a safe country, enough funds to live quietly, if narrowly, for the rest of your life. You will always be listening for footsteps. Always wondering. Or, he paused, the weight of the word filling the space between them, you can trust me. Stand beside me. Look your father in the eye. And we end this. For good. Tonight. It wasn't a choice between danger and safety. It was a choice between a lifetime of running and the terrifying, electrifying gamble of trusting this formidable, merciless man to be her sword, her shield, and her partner in the blaze. She looked at him, at the ruthless certainty in his eyes, at the power he held so casually, at the man who had seen her weapon and not her wound. She thought of Chloe's photographed face. I choose to fight, Leila said, her voice firm for the first time since the bar. The preparation was intense. Kane became her drill sergeant and her acting coach. He schooled her in the persona she must wear, not Leila Vance, frightened whistleblower, but an enigmatic, confident companion. He drilled her on likely questions, on how to hold a glass without her hand shaking, on the art of saying nothing with a convincing smile. He had a dress delivered, a column of emerald green silk that seemed to be woven from shadows and fire. It fit her as if it had been grown for her. He showed her the microscopic transmitter and receiver sewn into the beading along the neckline. You will hear me. I will hear you. Always. Their interactions transformed. The master-prisoner tension remained, but it was now fused with a new, electric charge of partnership. He touched her, to adjust the fall of the dress on her shoulder, to tilt her chin up to a more defiant angle. His hands were firm, brief, professional, but each contact sent a jolt through her system. Their eyes would hold during these adjustments, a second too long, the air between them crackling with unspoken acknowledgement. He was no longer just her captor, he was her general, and she, his willing, crucial soldier. The realization was as terrifying as it was thrilling. The Horizon Gala was a cathedral of wealth and hypocrisy. Crystal chandeliers blazed, diamonds glittered like ice on throats and wrists, and the air thrummed with the low symphony of money and influence. Leila, on Kane's arm, felt the emerald silk like a second skin, a suit of armor. She was no longer a piece being moved, she was a weapon being unveiled. Kane was magnetic. His usual stark intensity was sheathed in a veneer of polished, formidable charm. Together, they were a stunning, unsettling puzzle, the beautiful, unknown woman and the powerful, mysterious man no one could quite place but everyone deferred to. She saw her father. Senator John Vance, silver-haired and statesmanlike, holding court by a massive ice sculpture, his laugh booming, his hand clapping a donor on the back. The paternal pride on his face, the picture of American success, made her stomach clench with a fury so cold it stilled her nerves. The plan unfolded with silent, brutal precision. At Kane's subtle nod to Victor across the room, the first domino fell. In a quiet hallway, a renowned investigative journalist from the Financial Sentinel felt his secure phone vibrate with an encrypted data packet titled Elysian, the Serenity Lie. Simultaneously, Kane guided Leila through the crowd, a steady, inexorable force. He led her into a private, oak-paneled lounge where Richard Thorne, the sleek, arrogant CEO of Elysian, was in deep conversation with Senator Vance. Senator Vance, Kane said, his voice cutting through their conversation like a scalpel. A moment of your time? I've been fascinated by your daughter's groundbreaking work at Elysian. Her father's affable smile froze, then cracked. The blood drained from his face, leaving a grayish pallor. Thorne looked politely confused. My daughter is in environmental law on the West Coast, Vance said, the lie smooth but his eyes darting to Leila with dawning horror. Not Chloe, Kane said softly, his arm tightening almost imperceptibly around Leila's waist. Leila. He proceeded then, in calm, devastating detail, to outline the Serenity flaw. He cited trial numbers, referenced buried memos by their internal codes, described the specific neural degradation pathways. He spoke not as an accuser, but as a professor stating irrefutable facts. The temperature in the plush room seemed to drop 20 degrees. Outside the lounge, a ripple went through the gala. A low murmur built into a wave of shocked conversation. Phones lit up. The media leak had hit. Thorne, cornered and sweating, dropped the facade. His voice turned venomous. You have no idea what you're interfering with, Mr. Kane. The repercussions. Kane's smile was arctic, a flash of white in the grim room. I have a complete and thorough idea, Mr. Thorne. And as of 1 hour ago, my holding company, Nighthawk Capital, became the majority creditor on Elysian's 3 largest debt instruments. Your emergency board meeting is scheduled for 8 a.m. You're finished. He turned his storm-gray eyes to the senator. And you will announce your resignation from the Senate for health reasons by 9 a.m. tomorrow. You will also resign from the Elysian board. If not, every offshore account, every sweetheart land deal, every hidden favor for every donor on that chip goes public alongside the trial data. Your legacy will be a footnote on a medical scandal. He offered Leila his arm, a courtly gesture in the ruins of their world. We're done here. Back at the cliffside estate, the adrenaline bled away, leaving Leila feeling hollow, light, and strangely numb. The battle was over. The dragon was slain, not by a knight, but by a darker, more effective monster. She changed out of the emerald gown, hanging it carefully, a relic from a war. She was free. Truly free. The logical next step felt bizarrely simple. She went to the guest room, her room, and pulled out the small bag of her original clothes. She packed them, her movements mechanical. Kane found her there, zipping the bag closed. He stood in the doorway, his tie loosened, the first signs of human fatigue around his eyes. What are you doing? Leaving, she said, not looking at him. The deal is done. You destroyed them. My father is broken. Thorne is finished. The data is public. I'm safe. Safe, he repeated the word as if it were a foreign, foolish concept. Is not the same as free. You think the story ends because a company's stock is crashing and a politician is falling? Your father has allies with long memories. Thorne has shareholders who lost fortunes, who will want someone to blame. The world now knows the face of the woman who brought down Elysian. Your face. I'll take my chances, she said, slinging the bag over her shoulder and walking toward him, expecting him to move. He didn't. He blocked the doorway, his presence suddenly overwhelming. You don't own me, Cain. The contract is fulfilled. I never wanted to own you. The words hung in the air, stark, raw, and utterly devastating. The controlled mask he wore like a second skin slipped, and for the first time, she saw what lay beneath, a fierce, possessive, all-consuming hunger. It stole the breath from her lungs. He took a step closer, invading her space. That kiss in the bar. You weren't just hiding. You were choosing. You scanned a room full of options and walked straight into the darkest, most dangerous shadow you could find. You asked it to swallow you whole. You don't get to walk back into the light now and pretend that didn't happen. You changed the fundamental equation of my life. You think I protect just anyone? I protect what is mine. This was the final standoff. Not between captive and captor, but between two formidable, matching wills. You can't just decide I'm yours. Leila fired back, but the heat was gone from her words, replaced by a trembling confusion. I didn't, he said, his voice dropping to a gravelly whisper, the intensity in his gaze burning away her last defenses. You did. With that kiss. You claimed my attention. My resources. My focus. You woke something up that had been dormant for a very long time. Now you want to walk away from the consequences? From me? What do you want from me? The question was a plea, whispered into the charged space between them. He closed the final distance. His hands came up, not to trap, but to frame her face, his thumbs brushing her cheekbones with a shocking tenderness that belied the ferocity in his eyes. Everything. Your fear, your courage, your brilliant, moral mind, your stubborn loyalty. I want you to choose. To choose to stay. Not because you need a shield, but because you look at me and see the same thing I see when I look at you. And what's that? She breathed, her heart hammering against her ribs. A different kind of empire, he said, the words a vow. Legitimate. Powerful. Unassailably clean. Built with the strategic ruthlessness I possess and the unwavering conscience you force me to remember. I don't want a prisoner, Leila. I want a partner. I want to build it with you. He was offering her not a cage, but a throne. A purpose. A shared destiny. In his eyes, she saw the truth he'd never voice. She had disrupted his cold, solitary, perfectly controlled existence, and he had no desire to return to it. He was, for the first time, showing her his vulnerability. Leila stared into the eyes of the man who had seen a weapon in her desperation and a queen in her ruin. The last of her fear, the fear of him, transmuted. It didn't become submission. It became recognition. A profound, terrifying, exhilarating click of two puzzle pieces locking together. This formidable, magnificent, ruthless man was her match. Her equal. Her choice. She didn't say yes. Words were inadequate for the tectonic shift happening within her. She showed him. She let her bag drop to the floor with a soft thud. She rose onto her toes, her hands coming to rest on the solid wall of his chest. And she kissed him. This kiss was nothing like the first. It was not desperate. It was not a lie. It was full of fire, of choice, of surrender and conquest all at once. It was an answer, a promise, and a beginning. Cain's response was a controlled explosion. A low groan vibrated from his chest into hers as his arms wrapped around her, crushing her to him, his mouth claiming hers with a possessive fervor that stole her breath and her doubt. He kissed her as if he were starving, and she was the first taste of sustenance in a lifetime of famine. Much later, Leila stood on the terrace of the cliffside estate, the endless tapestry of city lights sprawling far below. The night air was cool, but the solid, warm presence behind her, the arms that encircled her waist, anchored her to the earth and to the future. Cain rested his chin on her head, a gesture of quiet possession and profound peace. Leila Vance was no longer looking over her shoulder. She was looking forward, at the vast, dark, glittering horizon, a horizon she would now help shape, rule, and protect. The woman saved by a desperate kiss had not walked away. She had stepped squarely into her true, formidable power, forever beside the man who was ruthless enough to save her, and bold enough to love her for all that she was. The game was over. Their empire had just begun. She stepped into his world with a single kiss. Now, there's no turning back. That was only the beginning. What comes next is darker. Hotter. Far more dangerous. Part 2 is coming. Backhand index pointing right, subscribe and hit the bell, you won't want to miss this.